Taiwan, I'm Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin with growing concerns in Taiwan over what massive budget cuts will mean for the country's military. The opposition-led cuts come as China ramps up its military activity around Taiwan. Defense officials say the move could have serious repercussions. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te observed defensive military drills near an airstrip in the southeast and visited nearby naval facilities, where he thanked service members for protecting the country.
因为有你们坚守岗位，国人才能安心。
His comments come after Taiwan's two opposition parties pushed record-high budget cuts through the legislature, and as China ramps up air and sea incursions around Taiwan to intimidate it.
中国从未放弃对台湾的野心。 近年更是强化灰色地带侵扰，唯有仰赖自身实力的和平，才是真和平。我也希望朝野能够持续合作，支持国防预算。
The overall 7% budget cuts include a freeze on half of the expected $61 million in funding earmarked for Taiwan's domestic submarine program, as well as funding for its drone testing facility. Opposition Kuomintang legislators were concerned about delays with the project and questioned the necessity for the submarines in Taiwan's overall defense strategy, which is focused on small, mobile units engaging in asymmetric warfare. The budget now requires that the first domestically produced submarine, unveiled in September 2023, complete operation and quality tests before the frozen half of the funding can be released. The Defense Ministry is pushing back against this, saying the cuts could create further delays.
造成了国际看我们在战略型的武器捍卫自己国家决心的时候呢，一个非常大的隐忧，冻结对我的官兵情何以堪。
Adding to pressure on the government and defense ministry is the recent inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump, who has urged Taiwan to increase its defense spending and pay for defense aid from the U.S. The U.S. has also been pushing Taiwan to develop its asymmetric warfare strategy.
不对称作战用的，比方说各种精准弹药啦，又或者是传统的一些大型载台，比方说战机、战车、火炮等等的船舰，这些东西当然是可以进一步去采购。
But more of these weapons may be hard to come by, as the military also faces a 3% cut on funding for equipment and facilities, meaning that some of its key defense infrastructure could be compromised when threats from China are high and the country's biggest unofficial ally becomes harder to please. Eason Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus. The Digital Affairs Ministry says undersea cables connecting Taiwan's outlying Matsu Islands to the rest of the country have been severed. The ministry says the cables are believed to have failed due to natural deterioration, with no suspicious ships detected nearby. Backup communication systems have been activated, partially restoring internet access for the island's 14,000 residents. U.S. President Donald Trump has spent his first full day in office continuing to dismantle the work of the Biden administration. He's targeted diversity initiatives, implemented tough new immigration rules, and says a 10% tariff on Chinese imports could be in place soon. Rosie Greninger reports.
Dismay and despair in Tijuana, along Mexico's border with California, as people's hopes of entering the US are dashed by its newly installed president, Donald Trump, who just unveiled a raft of executive orders aimed at cracking down on immigration. On his first day in office, Trump declared a national emergency at his country's border with Mexico, claiming America's sovereignty is under attack. Illegal migrants will now be deported instead of being released in the US while they await immigration court hearings. He also ordered the shutdown of the CPB One app, which allowed migrants seeking asylum in the US to schedule appointments for processing.
Una de las tristezas más grandes de que ha tenido mi vida primero porque he sufrido mucho para estar aquí donde estoy, este suelo que estoy pisando.
Following through on another campaign promise, the US president signed an executive order seeking to revoke birthright citizenship, which provided automatic citizenship for people born in the US, including undocumented migrants. It's expected these border policies could result in mass deportations. But with birthright citizenship protected by the 14th Amendment, at least 22 states have already moved to challenge the order.
Today, I'm also following through on a promise to take action if Trump violates the law and infringes on our rights, on your rights, as he did today with what is, frankly, an un-American executive order. I have one message for President Trump. I'll see you in court.
It's not the only executive order facing legal action. An American civil rights organization focused on LGBTQI+ rights is looking to sue over Trump's declaration the federal government would only recognize 2 genders. Also among his first executive orders was the reversal of climate policy, including the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, declaring the US would drill, baby drill. He also exited the World Health Organization. And closer to home, Trump pardoned or granted clemency to around 1,500 January 6 rioters who stormed the Capitol with his encouragement in 2021. Among the hundreds already released, the former leader of the Proud Boys and many other members of right-wing militia organizations.
I feel vindicated and validated. Yes, absolutely. Of course, I haven't gotten a pardon yet. I got commutation. But I'm applying for one. I'm pretty positive I'll get one.
As Trump's executive orders are set in motion, he's touting many other changes, threatening to further sanction Russia if President Putin refuses to negotiate about ending the war in Ukraine, and signalling plans to impose a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada and fresh tariffs for Beijing.
We're talking about a tariff of 10% on China based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada.
Amid the extensive changes to the US policy agenda, the bishop at an interfaith service of prayer in Washington made a plea for compassion directly to Trump, who was sitting in the congregation.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now.
But there are limitations to Trump's executive orders. They can still be blocked by both Congress and the courts. For now, Trump is showing no sign of slowing down, leaving many feeling uncertain across America and the globe. Ryan Wu and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
A delegation from Taiwan that's in the U.S. for Trump's inauguration has met with members of Congress. Leslie Liao is following their progress in Washington.
On his 3rd day in Washington, D.C., Legislative Speaker Han Kuo-yu met with 18 members of U.S. Congress. Han said that he spoke to the lawmakers about a double taxation bill that would grant tax relief to Taiwanese people living in the U.S. That bill is still being held up in the Senate.
我们因为美国众议院已经通过了，现在就要看美国参议院。如果这个参议院也通过的话，对台美之间，尤其是互相有联系的投资企业界来说，是一个利多非常，而且台湾的企业界特别需要这个避免双重课税。
At a time when Taiwan's legislature is cutting the national budget, U.S. policymakers are calling for Taiwan to increase its defense spending. Democratic Progressive Party lawmaker Wang Dingyu, who sits on Taiwan's Legislative Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, said that there was a healthy exchange of ideas in that realm.
军事的部分，当然有好几位众议员、参议员也关心到台湾对自我防卫的投资，还有我们国防预算相关的问题。那我想彼此交流充分的意见。那我跟柯志恩委员，我们虽然我们两个不同的党，我们对他们展现是一致的态度。
On Tuesday evening, Han sat down to a banquet at Taiwan's reception estate in Washington, D.C., Twin Oaks. He'll meet with a few think tanks on Wednesday before heading back to Taiwan. Leon Lien, Laurel Stewart, and Leslie Liao in Washington, D.C. for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has met with ministers from the Quad group of countries on his first day in office. Made up of the U.S., Japan, India, and Australia, the Quad says it's focused on maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific. The meeting indicates that the region will be a top priority for newly inaugurated President Donald Trump. In a joint statement, the foreign ministers said they would strengthen regional maritime, economic, and technology security in the face of increasing threats. Over a dozen historic sites in southern Taiwan need repairs after Tuesday's powerful earthquake, and the Culture Ministry is vowing to help. But some of the damage is extensive and aftershocks continue. John Van Trieste reports.
Shattered plaster and piles of splintered tiles littered the ground after a magnitude 6.4 earthquake hit the historic city of Tainan. This collection of around 20 buildings on the city's edge, known as the Old Jiang family residence, is a farming village, with some sections dating back 200 years. But the main quake and the punishing aftershocks that followed threatened to make this historic complex uninhabitable. The assessment of the damage, from cracked roofs to crumbling columns, is grim.
有的是整个屋顶塌掉，有的是裂开。如果这个未来不做修缮的话，这个房子是没办法再住人。那因为目前这个房子毁损的程度很严重，我们希望看看是不是政府单位能够尽速来协助帮忙。
This is just one of 13 historic sites in the oldest city in Taiwan that needs urgent repairs after the earthquake. At this site, commemorating one of the bloodiest uprisings against Japanese colonial rule, the walls are warped and split with cracks, while glass windows have disintegrated. And while damage is lighter at Hobi train station, built in 1902, a professional assessment is still needed to make sure the structure is okay.
那目前外观看起来还阁无介明显啦吼，所以讲即马台铁这边的部分吼，因阁会请较专业的人来看。
The Culture Ministry is already drawing up plans for repairs and promising it will fight to get the funding needed. But aftershocks, the strongest above magnitude 5.0, continue to rattle this historic corner of Taiwan, so the damage may not be over. Hank Xu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Officials on Taiwan's Kinmen Islands have reached out to their Chinese counterparts to discuss how to deal with the tons of Chinese trash that washes up on Kinmen's beaches. Cadence Carranza reports.
These are beaches on Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Islands, covered in plastic and other trash, much of which has been carried over by tides from China's Fujian province, just a few kilometers away. Some of the garbage comes from China's coastal aquaculture farms, like these plastic barrels that don't break down easily and can harm Kinmen's intertidal zones, as well as its fish.
因为中国大陆现在发现说，这个海漂垃圾的这个保丽龙的严重性，所以开始禁止使用这个保丽龙，就改采塑胶的胡同。所以我们现在在海边看到的垃圾的大部分就是塑胶胡同。
Kinmen officials say there are hundreds of beach cleanups each year, removing around 400 to 500 tons of trash. But this has not been enough to rid the island of all the rubbish floating in from China. Despite the complexities of cross-strait relations, with China continuing to assert its claim of sovereignty over Taiwan, Kinmen officials have approached their counterparts in the Chinese city of Xiamen to discuss the trash problem, hoping to collaborate on finding a solution. And it wouldn't be the first time they'd cooperate on waste management.
目前在厦门市这个部分，他们是也有一些 AI 导入的人工智慧的这些监管船，会去了解这些垃圾海漂流的状况，那会做一些海岸上的一些捕捞的协助。
Some of Taiwan's other outlying islands, including Penghu and Matsu, have also faced similar problems with trash from China washing up on their shores, as has Hong Kong. And while officials work on trying to find a solution, there are those here who feel that the management of trash coming out of China needs to start at its source. Devin Tsai and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
At least 76 people were killed and dozens injured in a fire at a ski resort in Turkey's Bolu Mountains. The blaze broke out during school holidays with panicked guests jumping from windows. DNA tests are being used to identify victims. 9 people have been arrested as authorities investigate the cause of the fire. Japan's Ichiro Suzuki has become the first player from Asia to be accepted into Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. Ichiro played in the MLB for 19 years, mostly for the Seattle Mariners. After his induction into the Hall of Fame, the Mariners announced plans to honor Ichiro by retiring his number, 51. He's credited with paving the way for other Asian players in U.S. Major League Baseball. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.